And the question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think we all acknowledge that this issue is a complex issue because it involves families, it involves children, and as this motion states, it involves quite often children who feel unloved, unwanted, children who are placed in difficult circumstances, many whom face abuse and neglect. And I just think to some of the homes and the families and the people that I've met in my electorate in reading this motion and preparing my remarks today. I remember a grandmother, and I knocked on her door in North Bendigo, and she had 3 children, and she was their primary carer. She was one of our unsung heroes, a grandparent carer. And she was getting them ready for school. It was Sunday. They were finishing off their homework and getting ready. She said her greatest fear was that her daughter would come back into their lives. And as a mother, she said that was really hard to say because of the way in which the system's been established. Her daughter has had a troubled life and wasn't really capable of caring for her children. And the hardest thing for her as a mother was acknowledging that, but then acknowledging the heartbreak and the instability it causes the children when she comes in and out of their life. And now the legal system was involved. And what I took away from that interaction was just the complexity of the situation, the emotion involved in the situation, the complexity of the legal system, but more importantly, the question needed to be asked, what is in the best interests of those children? Any reform in this space needs to focus on what is the best interests of the children and the rights of the children. Too often our children are being used as pawns when we have relationship breakups, when we have situations where children are coming in and out of care. I also agree with the previous speaker, the member for Hotham, when she highlights that any reform in the space of inter-country adoption, we need to have strong rules in place to ensure that children do not become victims of trafficking, that we need to ensure that these children's rights are also protected. I personally know children who've been adopted from overseas by local parents, loving parents, and these children bring joy and happiness into their lives. To so many Australians who now have these stories, we need to ensure that all children that come here under these arrangements have these rights. We cannot afford to allow 1 or 2 to become victims. I'd also like to take the moment to acknowledge the work that the Victorian Labor government has done in this space of adoption. Only recently they've joined many other states and moved to legislate for same-sex adoption. Western Australia adopted similar rules in 2002, the ACT in 2004, New South Wales in 2010 and Tasmania in 2013. So the fact that Victoria has now joined them is a good step forward for my home state. And why the change? The legal certainty for relationships between parent and children is a necessity. It is so the courts can consider the children in a family to be siblings regardless of the biological relationship with the child. These changes allow children automatic inheritance from the permanent caring parents that they have. They allowed parents to apply for passports for children without seeking the birth family permission and a court order. They also removed the stigma that still existed for so many same-sex families, parented families in my state of Victoria. Deputy Speaker, many people spoke out in Victoria about the need for this to happen, that this bill in Victoria would remove the discrimination against children and parents of same-sex families. And many of the stories that they're told reminded us why this reform was so important. The bill that the Victorian government adopted, both in the lower house and then it was successfully passed through the upper house, changed the Adoption Act, substituting a gender-neutral word person for to replace the reference to a man and a woman. It was that simple to ensure that gay couples, same-sex families in Victoria had the same rights as single-parent families and heterosexual couples. I'd just like to finish with a few words of one of the mothers who talked about how important this was. most of the time driving to soccer or forgetting the bellow shoes, trying to be the best parents that we can. It's hard to believe that people see us differently. It's why these rules were so important to change.